In this tutorial, we add bookmarks to a PDF using the PDF endpoint. The Dynamic PDF Cloud API is a set of REST endpoints for creating and modifying PDF documents. You can also use it to get metadata about those documents. It's easy to use, it's efficient and scalable, globally available, and secure. Key features include an online document report designer, merging, stamping, and adding barcodes to PDFs, form-filling PDFs and retrieving form-filled information, converting images to PDF, encrypting and securing PDFs, retrieving text, XMP, and other information. We also have an online tool called Designer that makes creating PDF documents from a report template easy and straightforward. And you can call our REST APIs directly using your own client API or a tool like curl, or you can select one of our client APIs that make calling the REST endpoint easier. We have one in C#, Java, Node.js, and PHP. Get up and running quickly using the DynamicPDF Cloud API. Our online designer, the REST APIs, and client libraries make it easy to add PDF capabilities to your applications. The DynamicPDF Cloud API consists of the following endpoints: dlex layout, image info, PDF info, PDF text, PDF XMP, and PDF. In this tutorial, you merge 3 PDF documents and combine the 3 PDFs, and then add bookmarks to the merged PDF document. You also create a bookmark with an external URL, and we add that to the PDF's outline. Let's go to the tutorial now. Docs, Tutorials, Cloud API, adding bookmarks to a PDF. Scroll down to the required resources. To complete this tutorial, you must add the Adding Bookmarks sample to your Samples folder in your cloud storage space using the Resource Manager. After adding the sample resources, you should see the following: samples/adding-bookmarks-pdf-endpoint. From the Resource Manager, we download 3 PDF documents and the instructions JSON to our local file system. Here, we're assuming temp dynamicpdf-api-samples/add-bookmarks. After downloading, we then delete the 3 PDFs and the instructions.json from your cloud storage space using the Resource Manager. So let's go ahead and log in, and let's start with the required resources. So go up here and click Login. And if we don't have an account, we can sign up for one free. Select Manage Resources to open the Resource Manager. Select Samples. Click on Add Samples. And from the tutorial samples, check Adding Bookmarks PDF Endpoint. And this adds the sample application to your Samples folder in Resource Manager. Download Document A, Document B, and Document C. Also download instructions.json. Now delete all 4 files. Okay, let's return to the required resources. And let's scroll down. And the first thing we need to pay attention to is the JSON instructions document. An instructions document is a JSON document that describes how to process a PDF when using the PDF endpoint. Go ahead and go down to the Cloud API Users Guide, Cloud API Users Guide, Instruction Schema, and then select JSON Instruction Schema. Using the PDF endpoint requires you understand the pdf.instructions.schema.json schema. You use this schema to create an instructions document that you then use to call the PDF endpoint. You can review the actual schema at this URL or look at the schema document. Although It's much easier to use one of the provided client libraries rather than creating a JSON instructions document from scratch. And you'll see this later on in this tutorial. The JSON instructions document has a top-level PDF document and has inputs. And of course, the inputs that we're going to have are the 3 PDFs, outlines, and then it has an outlines element, which we're going to use to create our bookmarks. And let's go ahead and jump to the schema diagram. And you can see there's a nice schema diagram that you could refer to if you wanted to understand a little more about the schema. Okay, let's go back to the tutorial and let's look at the instructions document. And let's look at the instructions JSON. First, we have our inputs array. And those are the 3 documents, document A, document B, document C. And we're assigning each one of them an ID and a type. Then just below that, we have an outlines array. And the outlines array is going to describe how our bookmarks. So we have color, text, style, whether it's expanded or not. Notice in the children, each one is a child outline element. So we have document A, and then we assign a link to, which is document A, document B, and document C. So that's how we're actually going to create our outline for this. And then below that, we have our final child line, and that uses link to a URL rather than the input ID. Let's begin by considering the curl example. Copy and paste the curl command that's in the tutorial. Open Notepad and paste the command. Remove the hard returns, and you can see we have the endpoint, the authorization key, the instructions, which is the actual instructions JSON, and then we list our 3 local resources for the PDF documents. And then finally, we output it to add bookmarks output.pdf. Okay, so we need to get the API key. So let's go back to the environment manager, select apps and API keys, copy, close, return to Notepad, and let's paste the key. Be sure not to overwrite bearer. That's an important part of the authorization key. Paste. Now that we've added the key, copy the entire command and open command prompt. Paste, hit return, and it calls the PDF endpoint. Okay, now let's go to the output folder, and there it is, add bookmarks output.pdf. Open it, there's the merged PDF, document A, document B, document C, and each one of the outline links has the appropriate color. And we have the final outline element, which is the URL. Let's click on the final bookmark, and it opens the web page. Now let's consider the .NET C# example. This example we're going to go over in depth, and we will also discuss the other 3 client libraries, but we'll do those much more briefly as the syntax is pretty similar across client libraries. But let's start with .NET C# example. You can call any of the endpoints using their associated client library. C#, we have the .NET client examples GitHub project. We have a Java client examples GitHub project, a Node.js client examples GitHub project, and a PHP client examples GitHub project. And 2 more are on the way, Ruby and Go, but they haven't been released yet. Let's scroll down a little more and look at the C# instructions. Select the C#.NET tab. And you can see that the DynamicPDF API is available on NuGet, and we'll actually do this in just a minute. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new console app, and we're going to name it Add Bookmarks. We're going to add the DynamicPDF.API NuGet package. We're going to create a new PDF instance, and we'll assign it the API key. we're going to create 3 new PDF resource instances, one for each of the PDF to be merged. Then we're going to add those resources to the PDF instance, but we're going to return a reference to each PDF input instance where we set the ID. And then we're going to create the actual outline. We're going to create the top level root outline, which we're going to make red. We're going to add 3 child outline elements and set each element's color. Then we're going to create a new URL outline element and assign it a URL action. Finally, we're going to call the process method. And if it's successful, we're going to save the PDF response to a PDF file. Let's go ahead and start Visual Studio. Now, I assume you already have the .NET Client Example solution loaded. So we're going to create the application. And now we need to add the project to the solution. So right-click, Add, New Project. And for this tutorial, we're just going to create a simple console application. So select Console App. Next. Name it Add Bookmarks. Next. And we can leave the target framework as is. And it creates a blank file. Now, before we do anything else, let's add the NuGet package. So right-click on Add Bookmarks in the Solution Explorer and select Manage NuGet Packages. Click Browse and type in DynamicPDF, and you should see a DynamicPDF.API. And this is the Cloud API. Go ahead and select it. Install. Wait for it to install. And when it's finished, go ahead and close the NuGet package tab. And now we're looking at our bare bones file. So let's add the using statement. Obviously, we're going to use DynamicPDF API. So using DynamicPDF API, and we're going to use system.io to output a byte array that comes from our response and save it as a PDF document. Now let's add a new method, a static method named run. So public static void run, string API key, string base path. Okay, let's go up to the main method and let's replace what we have with our run method. And just type in API key for now. We're going to go get it in a second. And now let's type in our base path, c://temp/dynamicpdf-api-samples/add-bookmarks/. Okay, let's get our API key. So let's return to the environment manager. Apps and API keys, copy, and now let's paste it. Scroll down to the run method and create a new PDF instance. So PDF equals new PDF. Let's set the API key. And now let's create our first resource. So document A, PDF resource equals new PDF resource, base path plus document A.pdf. Now let's create a PDF input instance, which we're going to just call input. and it's going to be pdf.add_pdf resource. So we're adding the PDF resource to the PDF instance, and it's returning a PDF input, which points to the resource we just added. And let's assign it an ID. So input.id equals document A. Copy and paste the 3 lines that we just wrote, and let's change it so that we also handle document B and document C. So change the resource name to resource B, input name to input B, and then the ID to document B. And let's do the same for document C. Now we've added the 3 resources to the PDF, and we also have references to the PDF's input. Create a new outline element named root outline equals pdf.outlines.add, and let's give it the title of 3 bookmarks. And then we need to create 3 more outline instances for each of the PDFs. So outline A equals root outline.children.add, and assign document A. So that's the text we're going to display for this particular outline element, and assign it the input instance. So it's going to create an outline element with the title document A that points to the document A resource. Okay, let's do the same for document B. And now let's do it for document C. Only let's add one more thing, and this is just for the sake of explanation. Let's go ahead and add it just a little differently. So let's go root outline.children.add document C, input C, .color equals RGB color.purple. Let's set the color of the root outline. So root outline.color equals RGB color.red. Root outline.style equals outline style.bold italics. So the top level root outline element is going to be red, and it's going to be bold and italicized. Now for the first outline, let's set the color to orange. And for the second one, let's set it to green. Now let's create a new outline element, only this time we're going to point to a URL. So let's go outline D equals root outline.children.add, and let's just call it DynamicPDF Cloud API as the title. Outline d.color equals RGB_color.blue. Now let's set the outline's action, which in this case is going to be a new URL action. Outline d.action equals new URL action, and then the URL, https cloud.dynamicpdf.com. Let's go ahead and expand the root outline. Now we need to get the response. So PDF response equals PDF process. So when we actually run this, it's going to call the process method, which is the actual PDF endpoint, and then return the results as a byte array. Let's add some conditional processing here. So if response.is successful, then we're going to write all bytes as a file. And we're going to name it add bookmark C# output.pdf. And we're going to get the content from the response. If it's not successful, then we're going to write the error JSON to the console. Let's try running the application. Change to add bookmarks. Select run. Wait for it to run. Close the window. Now let's go to our folder, our output folder. And there's add bookmarks C# output. And there's our merged documents. Let's look at the bookmarks. And there you go. We have our top level bookmark, which is red. We have our 3 child outline elements, and then we have the bookmark for the actual URL. Now let's consider the Java example. The DynamicPDF Cloud API Java library is available on Maven, and you can get the example project from GitHub, and it's DynamicPDF-API-examples. I like to use Eclipse, so let's go ahead and open Eclipse. Wait for it to load. I'm assuming you already have the DynamicPDF API examples Java example loaded. Now let's look at the POM first. In order to get the Cloud API, you obviously would want to create the POM file. And in there you have the dependency on the DynamicPDF API. And also in the client examples, we include a dependency on Commons IO. Now let's close the POM file. Let's go ahead and run Maven, and it gets it goes ahead and it installs the dependencies and builds. Notice that the add bookmarks has its own main method, so we can run this independently from the other files. We have our run method with the API key in the base path. We create a new PDF. We set the API key. We get 3 resources, and we get the PDF input. And we get references to the PDF input. We set the IDs. Then down here, we get the outline. We create a root outline, and we add the 3, and then we add the 3 documents to the root outline. We add some color and some formatting. Then we go ahead and we add a outline element for our URL. We set expanded to true. Then we call the process method to get the response. And if it's successful, we write the file to a file array. Otherwise, we just print out the error. Let's run this application. Wait for it to run. Let's go to the output folder, and there it is. Add bookmarks Java output. Open it, and there you go. There's our created PDF. Now let's consider the Node.js example. The DynamicPDF Cloud API's client library for Node is available at NPM. And if you take some time to read the instructions here, you'll see that the instructions are the same as the other 2 projects. And the syntax, as you're going to see, is very similar. I like to use Visual Studio, so open Visual Studio Code. I assume you already have the Node.js client examples project loaded. Open add bookmarks.js. And there you go. The syntax is pretty much the same as the other 3 examples. We create a new PDF instance. We set the API key. We add our PDF resources. We add the resource to the PDF and get the reference of the PDF input. And we do that for document A, document B, and document C. And then we create our root outline. And in our root outline, we set the title as 3 bookmarks. Then we add the 3 child inputs as outline elements. Then we do some formatting, like set the color. And then we add our URL as an outline element to the root outline. We call the process method. If it's successful, then we output it. Otherwise, we write it to the console. And then we, at the very bottom, so that we can run this as a standalone, we call await add bookmarks.run. Let's run the application, node add bookmarks.js. Hit return. Now let's go to the output folder, open it, and there's our process PDF with the outline. Now let's consider the PHP example. You can get the DynamicPDF client library for PHP from Composer. I like to use Visual Studio Code for PHP, so let's go ahead and open that. And I assume you already have PHP client examples loaded. Open add bookmarks.php. And there you go. The syntax is pretty much the same as the other 3 examples. We create a new PDF instance. We set its API key. We create 3 PDF resources for our documents. We add the resource to the PDF, and we get a reference to the PDF input. We assign IDs. Then it's a little different in that we use the PHP array push method, and that pushes each one of the input elements to the inputs array for the PDF. Then we create our root outline, and then we create the outline elements for our 3 documents, and we do some formatting like the color. And then we create the outline element with the URL. We call the process method. Oh, let's change that. I misspelled successful. If it's successful, we output it as a PDF file. Otherwise, we print out the error message. Let's run the application. PHP, add bookmarks.php, hit return. Now let's open the output folder. Open it, and there's our outputted PDF. Now let's review what we've done here. First, we created a new PDF instance, and we set the API key. Then we created a PDF resource instance to document B, and then we added the resource to the PDF and got a reference to the PDF input. And we assigned it its ID. Then we created a root outline, and then we added the two children, document A and document B, to the root outline. Then we added document C to the root outline, only we did it a little different just to show that you could do some processing such as color and things like that in one line. Then we set the root outline's color and style, and we set the color for the other two child outlines. Then we create an outline for the URL action. And let's see, we call the process method and get the response. And if it's successful, we write the output as a file. Otherwise, we write the error JSON to the command line. So as you can see, creating a new PDF by merging existing PDFs and then adding bookmarks to that newly created PDF is straightforward and easy when you use DynamicPDF Cloud API's PDF endpoint. I'm James, Developer Evangelist at DynamicPDF, reminding you, when you think PDF, think DynamicPDF Cloud API. See you next time.